Nick brought me over his son's bass guitar today. This is a Yamaha standard, or Yamaha Attitude standard. Nice old bass. I reckon this is a Japanese, could well be a Japanese made one. Don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Anyway, it's one of the good old days. And the thing about this is it more importantly, it's a much loved guitar. And it's one of the things I picked up from Nick when he brought it over today. Nick's local to me, which is great. Found me on Google, or found me in Google, and saw that I was nearby. So I came across with this guitar, and he wants this guitar to play as well as it can, and it's a lot as a special gift. The setup and the refurby bit is like a special gift to his son, as a way of saying thanks for his son's playing music with him and all kinds of things. So it's a great personal sentimental value thing. So we had a look at the guitar when Nick came over, and there were one or two things that were immediately noticeable that were wrong with it. And one of them is that Tom, I believe, had stopped being able to play it because you can hear there's some significant fret buzz, and the action is cranked up really high, and it has to be cranked up this high. Let's see if I can zoom you in. Oh, it's time for a close-up. The action is really cranked very high down here. So you get an idea of it from looking side on. Yeah, really high. Bit of buckling there on the old scratch plate. Pots are a bit iffy, not sure if they work properly. Bent selector switch, very high setup. The frets weren't in too bad condition, and the nut could be replaced, so we'll make a tusk nut for there. There were a couple of little things, like the break angle on these tuners, on these strings, was practically non-existent. If you can see on the E and the A, you'd want at least some angle, but there's none. And one of the reasons for that is the way it's been strung. These are sort of the split post tuners, which are kind of designed to go. In fact, what I probably ought to do now is, for just as a piece of info to help Tom in future with the winding, what I said is we can look for a string tree for this, for those strings if necessary, but I'm not at all sure that it's necessary. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's kind of take this string off, and we'll go back to the way I think this is meant to be. So let's get a big meaty pair of cutters. So when you come to restring this guitar, what I suggest you do is you pull it, it's falling off the guitar rest. You pull the string taut about one tuner's worth, the distance between the tuners past the one you're going to fit it on, and then cut it. I've got a bloody magnet on here. Hang on a second. The magnet that holds my tools was stuck to the tool. Right, so you can see that we go past the one we're using and we cut it, right? Which gives us that. Then the idea of these is you push the cut piece into the hole, push it right down in there. This is the idea, and then you get your thingy-me-jig and you start turning it against that, so you get a lot less is designed to go onto this. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go on at sort of the same height as the string comes out, but actually then I'm going to push it downwards with the idea that it kind of goes down. Now, I think you'll see straight away the difference. Look at that. I mean, there's a major difference. You see that? That is actually more than is enough. And you can see the difference between that and the A string, which is going off into oblivion. Oh, hello there. Handsome dude. Right, so you can see that that's I don't think we will need extra string trees. So can't really hear it, but let's try and get the ping. Right, and we'll do the same with this one. So the same needs to be the case for all of them. And I'll just do, actually I'll do this one and then we'll kind of go back to assessing the thing. So again, go to the actual one and go past a tuner's worth and cut the excess off. And then we'll, now if you have to be actually on the case with this, because if you cut to the wrong one, you can actually find yourself chopping a string off with not enough wire. It's quite amusing. I've done it in the past. Actually, these tuners are a little bit tired. I need to have a close look at those. They are still working, but something's come off or missing. Anyway, so there we are. I'll again look at it from the other side. This is a bit less pronounced, but it's still it's a bit less than the E, but it's still more of an angle than it was before. And the way you can really tell that is to, oh God, sorry about this. I only got in vaguely enough hands, so you can see there's quite a bit of an angle there coming off the top of that. It's about 3 degrees or 2 degrees, something like that, but it's enough to ensure that the guitar plays the way it should. All right, so that's the first observation. And Tom, that's something that's just worth keeping in mind. And of course, it also makes the guitar a lot tidier. You won't get your hands caught on these things. It's quite amazing. If I actually zoom in quite close, you can see how much wire there is on the sort of traditional way of doing things. But look how little wire is involved in here, and that will be tuning stable. Now, if you don't feel comfortable with that, I did it exactly 1 tuner's width, but you could do it 1.5 or 2 if you're, if you don't quite trust it. But that's incredibly, there's very little there to catch and hold on to slack and cause tuning problems, which we'll come to later on. So anyway, the main benefit of this, your way of having it before, I'm sure held tuning okay, but this gives you back the angle that we didn't have before. It doesn't look like much now. We don't have anything to compare it to, but that is considerably better than it was before. Okay, so yeah, just let's have a quick look around this guitar then. Familiar from the Pacifica style thing, we've got what looks like a bone nut, but it may be plastic. There is another slight problem on this guitar, and if I can turn it over, it's something I pointed out to Nick today when he brought it over, and that's we've got a split in the headstock here as a result of the this screw being, perhaps the pilot hole wasn't large enough for that screw, and the result is quite common. You've got a chopped, sorry about this terrible bit of camera work, I'm trying to find a way to do it. You've got a split that goes down into the wood. I'm going to take these off and examine them and stuff throughout the process, and what I will do is I'll see if I can get some glue into there to attempt to stabilize it. If it opens up a little bit, I can get some wood glue in and clamp it. That would be even better. So come down this lovely neck. I suppose I better go into standard zoom. Ooh. Down this lovely neck, very nice neck joint, sensible arrangement there. This guitar has quite a few dings and stuff. The strap buttons are loose, which we'll take care of. It's got some paint waiting to fall off here, plenty of scars from being played and loved, but that's not the point of this. It's a nice big thick body as well, you can see. It has a look about, let me just see that. Ooh, I wonder if this is laminate. Either that or it's got a nice grain here, because I could see some sort of stripes. I can't imagine it would be laminate. Anyway, yeah, so all these screws, I can replace these. They're all rusted. They may shear off as I take them out. That's possible. And then when it came to the frets, we had a sort of discussion about these. Now, one of the interesting things about the frets, again, if I'm going to try and, let's try and zoom in here. Oy, that was a quick zoom. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but look at the very last fret carefully. Watch it carefully. I don't know if you could see that. It's absolutely very difficult to do this. I did it with my thumb, a fingernail earlier on. if you press down this, you can probably just about see this fret moving. So there are a couple of these frets feel a bit unhinged, and I was all for doing a basic set, or my full setup, including fret leveling to get rid of some old sort of fret wear down here. And then we sort of discussed a couple of loose frets, and then I think the idea of refretting it then appealed to Nick, because I think it feels like he would really like to give it back in a way that's very clearly very loved and upgraded or refreshed. So the end result is this. We agreed I'm going to refret this guitar with Evo Gold wire. We're going to have a Tusk nut here. We're going to put new strings on. I'm going to clean up the headstock and tuners, glue that split if we can. I'm going to replace these with non-rusted screws. I'm going to clean up these pickups a little bit. I'm going to sort the wiring out here, replace these pots. If this works fine, we'll just bend this straight and put a tip on it and clean up the bridge. Basically, get it ready for another 20 years playing, which is exactly what it deserves, being a much loved guitar. So let me just plug in, oh hello there, let me just plug in some power, and let me switch power on because I never remembered that part of it. So before I do anything else, well, I've got another job to do tonight, but I figured that what I'll do tonight, because I want plenty of lead time on parts and things that I might need, which I'm hoping we're kind of clear about what it needs already, but just to be on the safe side, and since we're going to refret it, I think it needs stripping down completely. So I propose that that's what I'm going to do now, so I can see what's required. I can then measure the frets and so on and so on, and we can then get those orders underway to have the parts, any parts we need, including strings, in for next week, sometime next week, because I know that Nick would like this back within within time to play with his son again. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my, if I remember where I've put it, my digital caliper, and I'm going to measure the string sizes. Not being a bass player, I can't just eyeball them and tell you what they are. So I would say that's 102. So here's 102. This is going to be approximate because this isn't the most accurate thing in the world. A showing as 86. I think that'll be an 85 probably. G 64 or thereabouts, and then the D 64, G 47, G 47. Okay, so that gives me a reference point for ordering strings, which is good. What else do we need to know? Oh, one of the things I forgot to say is, one of the things that was obvious to me why this had become unplayable was the neck had gone into a back bow. So instead of being flat or ideally a little bit curved in a concave way, it's now convex, bending upwards, and that means that this is happening. Well, not so much. There you go. It's the strings are striking the frets around here because there's no room for it to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the strings off now. As I say, I will take the tuners off and make sure that they're salvageable. I have got a set of old tuners like this in a box somewhere, that in case we need some parts or anything, we might be able to cannibalize. The thing about this, the first thing that I need to do before we invest any money in it at all, and this is really critical, is to, I'm going to do it right now, is to test the truss rod. If the truss rod doesn't respond and doesn't work, and we can't make any adjustments to this neck, then we have to stop and ask, is there any, should we invest in it? Now, the reason I'm saying that is because if it's become unplayable due to the neck becoming convex, then we've got no choice. We can't just try and play it. We know that it's not playable as is. So the thing we now have to do is to be able to control that convex curve with our truss rod. If we can't, then like I say, we have to think again, which would be a shame because I'm looking forward to restoring this, getting it back into a great playing shape. So out comes the old adjuster piece. Promising. Now, if this, will this be a 5mm one? I think it will. I've got a funny feeling that it will. Yeah. Okay. So, fingers crossed. You won't be able to see this now. Wish I could do this. You can do this with the overhead, can't you? Probably. Let me turn the overhead in. At least have some chance of getting it over here. Right. Okay, overhead. So at the moment, oh, it's massively backbowed. So to slacken the truss rod and hope that it will flatten or curve, we go counterclockwise. From looking at the end, clockwise tightens the truss rod on all but a few models of guitars. There are one or two where it doesn't. Oh, this feels very stiff. But let's give it a go. Frapture stay. Caloo Calais. Right, now I'm not even going to stop there. I'm going to crank this. Right, now this has gone right to slack, which is all it can do. It doesn't have a double function. It doesn't go in the opposite direction. But looking at this straight down the side, I can already see that that has taken away the excessive back bow. We have now got some relief in it, and if we put strings on, this would now play and it would fix that problem. So fantastic, happy with that. Whew. So let's get these strings off. So am I going to use them again? Yes, I probably will. So I may well use them for making the nut slots when we come to putting a new nut on, whatever. I think it should be Tusk. It would be a shame not to. I've got, or I will order in a black or a cream, depending on which is available. Tusk blank, and those Tusk, those Tusk blanks are designed so you can make any kind of nut out of them. So whether it's a bass nut or a large scale 12 string or something like that, you can do it. There's enough material. Of course, it throws away a fair bit, but it's not the end of the world. What's more important is having a good nut. Now I'll keep this nut because it's a very good reference point, so I'll know. I'll have a sort of clear idea of the spacing. That's always a good thing to keep. just to duplicate it. I'm not sure that Tusk. I don't know. In fact, I could be totally wrong. It's not. I have no knowledge of whether Tusk make bass guitar nuts. They may well do, for all I know. Okay, so pretty short order, this guitar is going to look stripped bare, and it's a sort of it's a way of checking and making sure that all's good to go, and that we're not going to waste a little spider. Not waste Nick's money or Tom's time and skills by trying to make something that has got a fatal flaw in it. Now, I'm pretty certain this doesn't, so I'm pleased about that. I'm just going to put these safely off here. We'll come back to those. So the next thing on my list is take off the neck. And again, at this point, the only thing I'm sort of, oh, my camera's going to fall off any second there. The thing I'm looking for is just to see, I need a container as well, just bear with me. I'm on the lookout to make sure if there are any oddities that might include shims and things that are in position to make the nut play the way it should. And it's worth noting what those are and where they are and so on. And it's also things like how tight the screws are right now. It's worth noting that. I could feel that came off pretty easily. So I'm going to take everything off because I think we're going to need to go through the electrics and replace, I think 2 of the pots would be a good idea, and just see, make sure everything under there works. So here go my, what they're called. These have been, I think these have been resined on at some point so that they stay in place. No, maybe glued or resin, something in, but they come out. Okay, so we're going to turn the bass over. Okay, they've got a tongue under here, it probably has. Okay, we'll not take that off for a minute then. We'll switch bits again. This is where we'll get rid of all the rusty screws now and the pick guard. So each one of these that comes out in a pile of rust dust, you'll just be glad that it's coming out, because like I say, rusted pick guard screws have a horrible habit of breaking, shearing off. It's not the end of the world because we can dig them out and fill the holes, but it just adds a pain in the arm, backside, pain in the arm level. But don't misunderstand me. I may sound annoyed, like it's a pain in the but in reality it isn't. There's nothing better than doing this kind of work, so I am not really complaining at all. Off comes the remaining nut, knob, and we'll find out where it belongs at some point. Okay, very, very simple. There's only one thing attached to the pick guard, and that is the switch. So I'll make it easy on myself. I'll just take the switch off at this point, and then we'll have the pick guard separate. VK 1710, sorry, 17,110. There we have it. Then we have the electrics. There's a ground. Oh, that's interesting. That's not plugged into anything. Is that grounded to the switch? I didn't see it. It might have been underneath there. That's possible. No, it wouldn't have been because that's not grounded. So that should be grounded. I'm just looking if that had come off there. I was wondering if that had fixed there, but is it tin? Well, that's interesting. I think, let's imagine if we put that between there and there. If that's between there and there, you think that's going to be grounded out. The problem is this isn't grounded to anything. So that doesn't really work. It's quite often that's overlooked. That's a funny little detail. Okay, so let's get the whole neck arrangement out here now. That she comes. Lovely. Nice bit of what I think is Japanese script on there. I could be wrong. Yeah, there's some pretty much certain Japanese stuff. I don't know how well you can see this. Just guessing now. I know, I'll look in my mirror and see what you can see. Yeah, now I can see. Look at that. Cool. Aha, right. Beautiful. Nice neck heel extension. I like that. Beautiful neck. I'm going to enjoy doing work on this. Okay, I'm just going to put the body over to one side for a minute on a soft surface. I'll put it on a carpeted shelf in the storeroom after this, but meanwhile I'm going to take off the tuners and examine them, and then we can look at the neck. This little screw here is a little bit mangled at the top, unfortunately. Okay, let's go for the tuner screws and see what lies under here. Hopefully nothing too terrible. Because when you're used to doing this holds no fears or terrors. Actually, not strictly true. The only terrors it holds is the fear of turning up something that you really haven't expected. But in this case, it feels very, I mean, it's very, very standard arrangement. There's nothing over complex about it. But I can imagine if you've never done it before, it might feel like you're stripping something right down to its innards. And it might be difficult to imagine that you'd ever successfully get it back together again. Okay, so there's the crack. It's not all the way through to the surface just yet, which is good. I don't think this is really prizable, openable, just looking at it. Now, I've got what device would I use to get that? Probably I would use something like what I haven't got here, which is a socket of some sort. But I don't have one. So I'll just tap it down with someone else. Okay. And the reason I'm taking these off is almost entirely so that I can theoretically, actually there's cracks on this one as well, so these haven't done too well. Crack there as well, very, very slight. So the screws were slightly oversized on the holes. These are well and truly fitted, although they will come off. Let's use this end here. Give them a clean. Just also get to check as far as the cracks go to be sure. Okay, it's not the end of the weld. I mean, one of the ways of possibly opening this up enough to get some glue would be to temporarily put a larger screw in, which would open it up, put the glue in, take the large screw out, which would close it back up, and then fill the hole and re-drill it. That's a little technique I've just invented, which would do the job. It's a temporary widening without risking splitting things. Okay, so the next bit will be this nut. Now, this nut, judging by, it's quite easy. This nut is plastic, out it comes. Thankfully, it's left me with a decent slot, which may, in fact, be, if anything, be a little bit like that. But providing we can get a decent sized fit at the bottom, we should have no problem with that. Okay, so the next bit will be to take the frets out, which I'm not going to do just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just measure them for a minute, or do it as much of a close as a measurement as I can get. This is a little bit imprecise, because for the simple reason that when you measure frets, it's hard to do it without your caliper wiggling all over the place like that, and so it makes a big difference if it's there or if it's there. 1.14, 1.1, 1.1, 1.05, 1.2, 02, 093, 099, 1, 9.9, 0.95, 1, 1. I think this, blimey, what was that? 1, 92, 77, 87, 76, 69. Well, okay, so we're getting anything between 0.75 of a mil and 1 at the most, which I'm going to record for posterity. What did I say? 0.75 at its lowest readings to 1.05 at its highest. So that's the fret height, and we're going to obviously go higher than that to get a new. I actually have some Evo Gold here, but it's actually the biggest size jumbo in the world, which I think will be far too big for, or maybe too big. I've got some more over here, but I don't think I've got the whole guitar's worth. So I'm still going to have to go and order some in. Not really will get to things. Actually, I think this is a small size. Yeah, this is a small size Evo Gold. Oh no! Oh no! No! Wouldn't be going for that. You go there for a minute. Right. Well, let's just do the width as well. By the way, while I'm at it, 2.3, 2.38, actually it's 2.38. That's what it's telling me. Width 2.38. So I think what we're going to end up doing is having something like a 1.4 and a 2.4 probably. So that's going to feel a fair bit higher, but then that's the point really of having new frets, because we don't want to just have the same worn feeling as before. We want a bit more material. Right, so I'm going to place that out of the way, and what I'm going to just do next is have a quick look at the pots. Now, I've got a slight problem here that I've got to tuck this away in there and keep it safely out of harm's way. I don't want it to sort of fall out and bang around, so I'm going to do this for a minute. Not that. Okay, hopefully that will just keep it out of the way. So I'm going to take lots of these things off. Right, I'm going to take these off too. The strap buttons. Probably need to fill those holes and re-drill to get a tight fit. Maybe they're tightenable just as they are. That'll be nice. But we can put some fresh felt on there. Wow. So I'm not assuming anything. What I'm going to just do next is just check the pots before I go looking for new ones, ordering new ones or getting them from my new stores. And they have the appearance of mini pots. So let's have a quick look under here. These appear to be fresher looking. Fresher looking screws. Well, that's probably because they've been polished out every time the guitar's played against clothing, which, funnily enough, keeps the rust at bay. It's constantly getting brushed and polished up. Okay, 2 miniature little pots and a load of tangled wires, which suggest, amongst other things, that the pots have been spun round a few times in their day. Okay, I'm going to put it so well, we've got a 473K 473 but 0.4, not K, what would we call it? We'd call it microfarad, 0.0473 being the thing you would use with the single coils of the 250k pots, but I won't know until I get them out. But they've been squished to fit the knobs on. Simple little thing about these knobs. It's interesting. Let's take this off as well. Rust. The reason why the button, the knob, fell off this guitar, by the way, is because where's my cutters now? Is because the screw-on knobs were screwed on in such a way that the screw went against there's a split in the pot with the two sides sticking up, and the idea is you screw it onto the slot, to the gap, so you don't crush the two pieces together. In this case, they clearly got crushed together, which made them smaller and therefore looser, and therefore they've dropped off. The pots have come off because it gets to a point where you can't screw them in any tighter. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick look at this pot from here. Okay, 250k. Good. 250k. Oh, that's broken. I mean, it wasn't broken, but I've just broken it as that. It was that tenuous. Okay. Blimey. Right. I'm going to draw this circuit out very quickly. It might interest you to see me do this, or it might not. Which camera shall we show you with? Tell you what, let's look with the whiteboard cam. I'll stop doing this, it's too much fun. Okay, so what have we got? Sorry, I've got to do this thing up first. Why is this the way it is? Why is this the way it is? Sort of like that. Okay, sorry, the worst view ever. Cut to the, not close up. Okay, so 250k pot here, like that. Okay, so we have two pickups. One is the zigzag one, and one is the long one. Zigzag, long. Then we come to the back here, and we've got two pots and a jack socket and a jack. Okay, so from it comes from different holes, right? Does it really? Yeah, one comes down through there. Yep, and one comes through there. One comes through there. Okay, so the bridge one comes in. Bridge one comes in through there, and the other one. Yeah, the neck one comes in through there, and we have basically, what is that coming through there? Okay, so that's where the earth goes to. Excuse me. Let's just double check this. That's where the earth goes through. Okay, so we've got okay, let's just see this. We've got switch loops. We don't need to mess with those. So the output from the switch is the middle, which is that red one there, which we can't see, but it is. Okay, so we've got the switch, hidden switch, and the switch really has a series of 8 little things on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Has it got 8 lugs? Probably. Or is that just for a 5-way switch? What am I thinking of? It's a 4-way, isn't it? But it does have 8 anyway. Okay, so we have, sorry, this is the worst filming ever, please forgive me. So we have the neck Let's put this, it's going to go that way, isn't it? So I've done it the wrong way around. Right, let's do it the way we can at least see it. But we're looking from the front now, aren't we? Front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Front, back. So from the front we have the hot for the neck, comes to there. Neck hot comes from there. We have the bridge, 1 and 2, yeah, bridge 7 and 8, whatever. Bridge into there, neck into there, and then in the middle 2, leave out 2, middle 2 goes out, and that comes. Okay, all right, so wire going through there, sorry about this. So one wire will be, crikey, it's a bit clunky with these 2 different pockets. I sort of, okay, let's not worry about that because we don't need to, sorry. I was going to draw it out, but actually, really all I need to draw out is the side cut, erase, just need to draw out the back side really. Let's just cover this off again, assuming all that works. So on this side we have, that's what I'm trying to figure out, out, right, that's to the cone. Okay, what the hell's that one? That's ground. Holy coo. Right. Do you know what? I think what I'll do is rather than try and draw this out, I think I'm going to just replace the 2 components bit by bit as we do it. Because this is so tangled up in here, it's going to make my eyes curl trying to figure it out. So I think I'll just do a straight replacement instead of trying to draw it. The problem with drawing it, believe it or not, is that because it goes from front to back loading, it's actually quite difficult to visualize and draw it simply. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this away in the other place now. Oh, let's just before we do that, let's just take a quick look at these, see if there's anything that's obviously problem with these. Okay, so we've got some movement here. There is a little hole on these things which doesn't appear to be doing anything, but there's no movement on that one. Very little movement on that one. Lots on that one. It feels very loose, and that's okay. It's come out of its little hole at the bottom. How am I gonna? Is there anything we can do about that? These are held in place by these little pins actually, which is a bit odd. That goes through to there, and it should, according to this, it should just sit into a little recess or just touching. That one's got movement too. Yikes. What I worry about this is these have been, which is the one that's not touching, that one and that one. I think this has been taken off, and I think what's happened is this has been put back in the wrong place slightly. Now I've tried to do it up a bit. These little bits here are, what's the word, threaded, so we can do them up. But is that the way you do it, with a little, is that hole meant as just a little grip for turning it? Because that's brought it back to the right place, but it's going to come undone again eventually. Well, that's solved the drift, or that solved the slop for a minute. So that's a very interesting little arrangement. I haven't seen that before. It sort of stiffens up, so you don't stiffen it up with this, which I think may have been done in the past, which is why this is a bit worn, but that one's a bit bent. But I'm not gonna, I'm not going to attempt to unbend it. And the reason for that is when you attempt to unbend old bent things, they break, and you pay for it. Right, you can take this to the carpeted storeroom to put it in the what do you call it, rest home for a while before I come back to it. So, okay, I've got me measurements. I'm going to do a tidy up now and get on to another job. Yeah, I've got measurements. Okay, what am I missing? Purple. Got me measurements. We'll do me orders. We're all good. Okay, and we'll see you when I come back to redoing the neck. I'll pull the frets on the neck. It'll probably be the next thing. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to Tuesday here in. Ooh, it's not got a lot of room on here now for this, but it's still a good place to do it, methinks. Okay, so we got the Yamaha Attitude Standard bass here. Oh, I was going to do a bit of work on that, but I'll do that later. So here we are. We've got the refretting thing to do now. I've got my Evo Gold fret wire arrived here. It happens to be exactly 9.5 inch radius, which this is. I've already gone down and lifted all the corners of these frets, the edges of these frets, with my patented fret lifting technique, which I explain fully in my amazing new ebook. But it's a great way of lifting the frets and getting them going. And after that, I get into pulling them up. Now, what we never know at this point, I think it's time I got some new ones of these anyway, because I don't like their lack of, they could do with springs. Anyway, so now we're pulling out all the old frets very gently and just try and sort of even lift up the frets with as little tear out as possible. There will be some, it's kind of impossible to avoid it. Now, this fretboard is looking very dry and it's in good condition generally. And it's one of those that we could, since we're keeping it all the same, but we want to make it feel nice and new, I would suggest that it's not like it's got a load of old mojo character that you sometimes get in very old, sort of kind of green algal growth or whatever it is. Yeah, so it hasn't got sort of loads of mojo that you get with some older, literally corroded necks. So what I will do is I'll go over this with very light radius block and light sandpaper and just bring this back to a fresh looking finish, and then we'll put the new frets in that way on top of that. So here come the old ones. Now these will have been put in probably, I don't know this, but probably without glue, although having said that, I'm feeling some kind of crunchy glue residue in here, so maybe they didn't put them in without glue. In fact, it's probably had glue. So these have been cut. I think it's hard to say how these were done. These may have been sort of they've got little end fills, but it's very, I don't really think they're end fills. I think they're lacquered over or poly finished over. So I think they were just cut straight, beveled flush, and had a poly applied over gloss poly shot over the edges and buffed out. So we have a choice when we do a refret, whether we kind of undercut these frets and treat them as if we were fretting a bound neck. And if you undercut them as if you were doing a bound neck, then it allows you, it gives you a little gap that you can fill in with burn-in sticks, which I've got here, which is a sort of meltable resin stick. It's pulling up a few chips and flakes here, but it's not the end of the world. And we're going probably a little bit wider on the new frets anyway, so I suspect this will cover any small flakes. It's impossible to get frets out without their sticking, some flakes sticking to it, and it's because either the glue or the oils or whatever stick very firmly, cause the grain of the wood to stick to the metal of the tang, and it's just going to want to split rather than break that seal. So do your best to pull it. I've heard so many different ways. People talk about, I mean, I've heated these things, I've chucked water on them, I've done all manner of things, and to be honest, it's down to the glue and the wood and the the grain and the flakiness of the wood. If it's going to flake, it's going to flake, and there's practically nothing you can do to prevent it. So if it's really bad, you just re-radius the board a little bit more. There's little bits that come out the edge that we'll try and keep it as good as possible. If you get a serious pull out, like some great chunk of material comes out, then you can always glue that back in at this stage and kind of sand it back flush, so you can afford to be a bit messy. Also, if the glue goes into the slot, you can also sort of afford that as well, because you can run the slot saw through and clean it out again prior to fretting. So what I will do with this is I will do a little check of the tang width on here. Yeah, little sort of crescent shaped chip outs coming up off some of these tangs. There's sort of there are people who, there are devices you can buy, like little I don't think the blade is almost better, it's much thinner, but there are devices you can use to sort of push underneath the edge and try and hold the wood down as you pull out the fret. But to be honest, it's the devices you can buy, you can't, they're too thick to literally get under far enough, so you're always going to be pulling from a place where you can't cover the wood with these devices anyway. It never can get to the point of pull, so you don't really have a lot of way. I think it's a lot of time can be spent thinking you're preventing it and actually not really getting very good results. So here we are, coming to the end of all of these old frets. So what I'm going to do tonight, I'm sort of in between spraying in the other room, which is a nice sort of routine. So I'm going to sort of stop every now and then and go to the other room, do another coat of, another layer of spray, and then come back and continue. So there'll be a few stops and starts on here. So let's just have a quick look. This is not clean. It's a bit messy, but I don't know how well you can see. He says looking into his mirror. Oh, that's okay. You can get the drift of what I'm doing. So I'm going to go and have a little average 0.6. So that's a jumbo fret type width. Excuse me, 0.6. And I would expect it's a bit more than 0.6, 0.7. It's showing me now. 0.7. It's I'd expect this jumbo Evo Gold or medium jumbo to be about the same. In fact, it's a tiny fraction more. No, it's the same, 71, 72. Okay, so now we've got this slightly crusty looking fingerboard, and I'm just going to quickly check, make sure it's flat. Now, something I've been talking about with some Real Love Guitars ebook customers and others online recently about this issue of the fingerboard never being actually flat. There is something very definite about that. No matter how people manage to take down the, no matter how well they manage to flatten out the fingerboard, when they get it flat, they notice that it's not quite flat. There are some strange micro undulations, and they spot that when they usually put a ruler across it. So it's very difficult to get it exactly flat. And that's not because your ruler's no good or anything like that. It's because the neck actually isn't flat. It's always it's a kind of an unusual undulating surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get me a nice bit of 120 grit. If I had to re-radius, I'd be using something like 80 grit, much, you know, heavier thing, and I would be looking to move a lot of material. I've got my 9.5 inch radius lock here, and I'm taking the sort of oils of the top layer of stuff out of this neck. Now, what I haven't got really is any room here to do this, so I think I'm going to take you elsewhere. I'm going to run on batteries for a minute while we go up to the bigger bench and do it up here. I've got a bit of elbow room, so I'll have to get my special mirror. It tells me what's what. There we go, you can see where we are. So 9.5 inch radius, and we can either hold it down or it could clamp it if you wanted to. So I don't want to do a massive amount of reshaping. I just want to clean this up. Nice light wood on here as well. So you can see it sort of makes a nice clean finish. What I'll do is I'll just get it all sanded back a little bit, and then we'll go down the grade, the rougher grade sandpaper, and then move on to the cleaning and prepping of the slots. Now, the secret in my experience of fretting is preparing the underlying surface as well as you can. The better you can prep the surface, the better a set of frets you're going to get on there. So what you want to do is you want to get this nice consistent radius. Often over time it will be worn down unevenly sometimes, but you want it as good and as consistent as you can. And what we'll then be finding out that our 1.5 inch radius, and let's cut one just to see my 2 meters of Evo gold here. We'll clumsily cut one. Actually, I'll cut just past the first bit. So here, we'll just take this one as a test piece. I cut the end bit off because when they come from the shop, they're always flattened slightly. And it's the same when I bend wire. The wire benders can't quite. They can't get a curl, you can't make the same curve, same radius on the first bit, very first bit of the wire. So you always get a little flat bit, and I forget that sometimes, and I include it, and then you wonder why the thing's sticking up slightly on one edge, and that's why. So just a quick test. What I can do is get my blade, I'm just going to scrape and clean this slot out as much as I can. If I want to, I could get me whatchamacallit, the slot cutting saw. I have to be careful because I always end up cutting myself with these things, although I use them all the time. If we get the slot saw, this will help us just get rid of the little sort of any fills on either end. Okay, so there's my cleaned out slot, and this fits in what feels like just about right. It would tap in nicely, and with a bit of glue that should be just spot on. So yeah, and looking at the radius of it, that matches absolutely perfectly. 9.5 inch radius, so I don't have to do any more work to the frets, which is good. Or if I can cut them, and I don't have to bend the wire any further. Right, I'm just going to go to the 240 grit now, just to smooth this off a little bit more. You might at most put a little bit of 400 across it just to sort of hand smooth it out, but it doesn't really need an awful lot. And certainly after that point I would be doing it by hand rather than putting it onto the radius block. Pretty much just doing it like this. This is sort of the last bit of smooth out. Now you can see here where some of the little chip outs live. You can just see them around the slots. They'll minimise as we fill the slots with glue. And the crown of the fret covers over the little busted up bits. So what we can do is for each of these we can just gently run down to break the seal at either end, but start in the middle and then lean over. And I'll double check these all before I start fretting. So what I'll do is I'm going to get, I've got the fret press over there which I'm going to use, and often I tap frets in, but today I'm going to use the fret press because it's there and it's a sort of fairly consistent device. Sometimes when I tap them in, I feel like I'm doing it with some slightly different levels of force, and I think the worry is that you can end up with frets sitting in just very slightly different heights, and that, although it can be microscopic, it can then give me the sort of spooks when I come to leveling, because it feels like quite a lot of work to do in one spot or another. So you can see this just clearing the slots all the way through. Now, what do you think? Shall I fret right to the end, or shall I undercut and fill afterwards? The nice thing about undercutting and filling is that it makes, you don't have all these metal bits sticking out on the edge of the fingerboard, and that's only really an aesthetic thing. There is a small advantage in not having frets sticking or coming right flush, and that is if the fingerboard dries out any further. This one's dried out over the years, because when I got it from Nick the other day, one thing we could feel straight away was the fret ends sprouting. So that's one of the things that can happen or will happen when the fretboard shrinks. Now I think it's old enough and probably seasoned enough now that it's not going to do much more of that, so that's not really an issue. But if continued shrinkage were an issue, one of the advantages of fretting it as if it were that's a phone somewhere. One advantage of fretting it as if it were bound is that when the neck shrinks a little bit, this doesn't stick out so quickly, the edges of this, because we've undercut it. So I think I will do the undercut thing, and I will go over it after we fretted with the burn-in sticks, and we'll blob some resin in the end which will harden, and then we can sand it back. And the only thing about that is it's not really, I was going to say it's not unique to that. Once you've done the edges of the frets, you tend to have to put some more finish onto the edge, the fingerboard edge, when you refret. You don't have to. You can probably shine up the remaining finish on the guitar neck and the edge of the neck, if you're careful. But and it's hardly distinguishable from whether or not it's got poly left on there, because it will shine up quite nicely. But I sort of tend to end up wanting to put some more poly down the neck edge, and there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can either wipe it on at home on the kitchen table, dining table, which is a nice sort of manual thing and controllable, no toxic odors, you can just whiz by. Or we could, if we were wanting to, we could key up the finish on this neck and overspray the whole thing with water-based, waterborne poly, gloss poly, which I'm currently doing with other guitars anyway at the moment. So there's a, that's a quicker way of doing it and a more consistent way. And then we just, once that's set, dried, we just sand that very lightly back and either buff it out on the wheel, or if we're feeling like it, we can just polish it by hand with some various different grades of papers and some scratch remover kind of cream, polishing cream at the end. So anyway, you can see what I'm doing is I'm sort of digging out the sanding dust, so we're getting these frets completely empty. This is vital for a good refret. If you don't do this, you won't seat the frets properly, and what will happen is one end of a fret or a part of a fret will end up sticking out perhaps without you noticing, and then you're in trouble. You either have to pull it while the glue's still wet and then clean out the whole thing if you can, or you leave it in and try and level your way out of it later on. And just trying to stack up a little bit. Okay, so nice. This will go lovely and dark when we put oil on it, I think, later on. What I'm doing at the edges here, I'm just softening them off a bit, because once you use the radius block to re-radius or tidy up the fingerboard when you're fretting, you can get quite a sharp edge out of it, which can make that guitar feel a little bit odd. Right, so I'm going to go back over, well, let's just clean these out the other way, or is it the same way? I can't work it out now. Now, there is a little thing here. If you were refretting and you needed to widen the frets, there's a number of ways you can do it, the fret slots. And it's important that if you're moving up a substantial gauge of wire, as you do, the tang thickness increases. And if you refret with a bigger, thicker tang size, what tends to happen is you'll hammer or press the frets in. They'll go in, but they'll widen, they'll push the slots wider apart, the sides of the slots, and by the time you've done 20 odd frets, or whatever it is on the bass, I can't remember now, you'll end up with, and same with the guitar, you'll end up with creating some back bow in your neck, which you may or may not be able to control adequately with the truss rod. So you really want to avoid that happening. It's just a natural consequence of shoving more metal into these thinner or slots that aren't wide enough. Now, I'm pretty confident these are the same size, having measured them with the micrometer, or what is it, radius digital caliper. So yeah, I'm pretty confident they're the same. So I don't think we'll have that problem. But if you did have that problem, you have to use some other device to widen the frets a little bit. Now, you can buy widen the slots, I should say. You can buy different size thickness saws for that, and a luthier will probably have a set in tiny increments to just widen up the slot a tiny bit at a time. I can't afford that sort of stuff, so I've made various I suppose you'd call them homemade things, slightly tapered, chisel-y looking things. But even at the actual worst, you can put a blade in like this, and you can just turn it slightly sideways, and you can sort of force a little bit of pressure into the slot that will widen it. So there are lots of different ways you can kind of encourage it to widen up. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all the frets first, so we might as well go and sit back down for that fun. And as you, sorry, there's me neck, there's the wire. Now, get a little marker pen. I also want to bring my cutters because I'll need them. Okay, so you know what I should do? I should go and spray another shot of stuff. I'll do that and I'll come right back.
You said when I got home, what am I going to do with that? That night, there's more millions. I tried again. When you returned home with a package of...
Oh, can't do it. I'm not allowed to have copyrighted material. Oh well. So here we are. It's a lovely sunny day. It's about 5:30 and I'm up here to get the edge beveling of this bass done, and then we'll probably get into doing some finishing on the edge of the fretboard if necessary. The first thing I'm going to do is just gently take off any really sharp bits and get the ends feeling like they want to play ball. If you attack this in one go, everything gets caught and you jam the frets where you don't want to jam them. So it's better to kind of push and pull with pressure on one end rather than all the way across to begin with. Eventually it will reach a place where it starts to run more smoothly, but you just have to be patient up to that point. It's not there yet. You can tip it over to get a bit of a bevel on it already, and that helps to make the cutting back trimming process a bit easier. And you can see now it's starting to come, start to cut nicely. Key thing with this block is you have to keep it down so it doesn't have any chance of skipping over the frets, because that's what it wants to do. Takes more filing at this end where all the frets are clustered together quite naturally. Now I'll just put this under here just to sort of steady this. So I've learned hard way, better to do lots of repetitive sanding and get these down to the right size rather than put too much force into it. It's when you put the force into it in an attempt to make it hurry up and get the job done, that's where you are going to make a mistake and skip the file across the new frets, which is a very depressing thing to do. So it'll take a while and some muscle power. So I'm going to switch off until I'm done with this because I want to listen to David Sedaris on the radio. So we have the refretted neck. It's currently, I don't know what you call it. Phone going. It's beveled back. I filled the little end gaps with burn-in resin, so it's all there. Always down there. And so the next bit, we've got a couple of options really. I'm just going to put you over here for a minute. You're not on the battery, so I have to keep that in mind. Looking down here, something like that. Stay there, possibly. Some of that. Sorry, it's going to fall off here. It's not a very stable platform. Yeah. Excuse me. Just perhaps a little tiny bit of end beveling to do, and then let's get rid of this for another day. the day. Get rid of the ends of the frets in a second, and then after that we could be looking to reassemble it. And then if we need fret leveling, we'll do it right at the end. So fret end beveling, I'm just going to use my safe edged file just to literally sort of round off any little bit of sticky up metalness that I can see here at all. And it's a very sort of last thing. I've sanded these fret ends back already, so they're quite smooth as it is. And on polishing out, the final polish out, I will kind of soften them out anyway. So really all I'm looking to do at this moment is just catch any little sharp, sticky out cornery bits, which there are hardly any, but anyway, so just whiz down both sides. And then once that's done, I think with this, it might just be smarter to put the, I mean, there's often different ways. We could do a sort of radius block fret level to begin with. Never hurts doing that. It sort of takes the obvious high spots off. So we could do that first, and then that makes a bit less work to do in any precision leveling part afterwards. So we'll try that. We've got this at 9.5 inch. Even though we know the edge of the fingerboard now is, as it happens to be, slightly rolled off. But that's not the end of the world, because the frets will be pretty nicely fixed in place. I've just done some spraying in the other room, and I have to go back. Just a little bit of overhang fret there. Damn it. Yeah, I've just done some spraying, and I noticed a tiny bit of dust got into the spray, so I'm going to have to wait until that dries, and I'm going to have to go in with a little bit of 1000 grit paper and just take care of that. Right, let's have a look at the, where's the 9.5 inch radius block? Somewhere. Here it is. Okay, so with this, we will take some, first of all, we'll just double check the neck is nice and flat, which it is. So we can just put on the marker pen right away, and what we'll do is we'll just run down with the existing grit that's on this thing here, which is quite heavy. We could thingy it out is the word. Put some smoother grade on, you know. But this is quite good for moving a lot in one go, and then we'll go over it with 400 grit. So just literally run down the fingerboard like this. And just have a look, and everything appears to be getting almost the same amount of cutting up, which is good. Just go right to the edges. Now, if with this, you tend to be that you could now, if you can find it, you can now get your fret rocker. I have one that I use for other things, but as always, I can never find it when I want it. Fret rocker can be quite good to. So here's a crappy one. Well, it should work. Okay, yeah, no rocking here. That's great, actually. What? That's amazing. I can't believe it. Wow. Good Lord. brilliant. So that's great. I will put the 400 grit on now, and I'll go over it just to smooth it out. So we just, whoops, I need a long one for this. So that we just basically take a bit of that 120 grit or whatever it is, 80 grit. We'll scuff some of that back up with this. Just get rid of some of those scratches. Now this is always a bit of a dodgy thing because it always catches. So a little bit less than ideal. Okay. Good. Right, so that's got rid of the heavy grit, grade grit. Hurrah! That in the spare sandpaper department. Okay, so I'm happy with this. What I'm next going to do, I actually think we won't need. Will we need to do recrown it? Well, let's recrown it because I think we're good to go. Judging by the levelness of that, I don't think we're going to need a precision leveling with the Truss Rod tool. So I think we need to crown this off now. Of course, we will need to mask off the whole neck and polish, sand the frets out through the grades to a high degree of shine and finish. But that's, I'm very impressed with the outcome of that. That's extremely good. Even though we know that there's a little bit of stick out at the end, but it's not a problem because the frets are dead on a 9.5 inch radius, as the fret, as the radius block has just confirmed. It's just that there's a little bit of a slope on the edge of the fingerboard. So these are medium thingy, and so there's hardly any, so hardly any recrowning to do. I'm very pleased with this. What I'll do after this, I think, even with, while I've got the neck off, I think I'll do the polishing out first off camera, listen to some crappy old comedy on the radio, and then I'll come back when I've got the frets all polished out, and we'll go from there, reassemble the neck, put the tuners on, put new springs on. We'll put new scratch plate screws on. We'll put new pots on. Is that, am I talking? Yes, we're going to put some new pots on, aren't we? I have to do that. Do that after this, doing the neck business. We'll make that the next job. And that should be pretty straightforward because we're just going to replace it in situ. So we'll take one, switch it out, hook up the wires where it was. God, there's hardly any level, any recrowning needed here. They were really level, he said. Slightly amazed, pleasantly amazed. Ah, yikes. Wire, steel wool into your thumb. A little bit of work on there, a little bit of work on there. Marvellous. Well, yes. Very pleased. So the next part of the game is to it's basically to cover up or mask off the fingerboard. Now I'm short on the standard sized papers, masking tape, but actually in the short term, no, I'm going to need, that'll do for starters, but I'm going to need to cut some. So let me get my cutting board out. And because it's a bass, it's going to be different from the standard set of paper that I normally used for a guitar, but I'll sort of try and guess it. I'll use this thick stuff. It's thin, but it's wider, if you know what I mean. And we do basically to get the whole of the fingerboard masked off so that we protect it. It's nice, as you can see, it's a nice, very nice rosewood, light rosewood. That will look great when it's oiled. So we've sanded it off, it's nice and refreshed. So the last thing we want to do is scuff it up with some sandpaper. So this will be where I'm cutting up some reasonably wide strips, and then we'll switch to the thinner tape, which I bought in the market the other day. Which is too thin from normal use, but it's okay if you haven't got anything else to use. So it's a sort of last ditch. But my my guy at the market, Paul. Hopefully he'll have some new stuff in before too long. So on these ones, I think I'm going to go half width to begin with. Half width, and go from there. So shall I go thirds with this next one? No, still halves, I think. Maybe thirds on the next one. So it's been a funny old time down here in my neck of the woods. I've stood for our local parish council election, which is a kind of it's like putting your head above a certain kind of parapet, in a way that I really don't relish. But actually, there comes a time, you know, few times in life maybe, you come to a moment where you come up against something on principle, and you think, I can't sit back and let this happen. I've got to take a stand on something. So me and a couple of other people have combined to do that. Suffice to say, there are lots of sides to all stories, but suffice to say, I think I wouldn't be being exaggerating to say that those who are against what we stand for, although apparently if you read their manifesto, they sound like they're for exactly the same things as us. Reforming local government so it's transparent and accountable. Anyhow, but there's a lot of anger coming at us from incumbents or recent incumbents and friends of incumbents, and it's I won't go into details about it, but all I will say to you is that it's a pretty horrible experience, but that's why I'm doing it, because perversely that's why I'm doing it. And the reason I'm doing it is because this nasty feeling of bullying and insults and aggression and shouting down is what I first encountered when I went to our local meetings or local parish council meetings, and that was the tenor in my experience. That's how I experienced the tenor of those meetings, and I thought it was horrible. And I observed it some more, and I kind of started to see hints of, as far as I understood, why people were behaving that way, and it was ugly in my book. Anyway, so I've taken the plunge to stand for the parish council at a time where there are a number of vacancies in a hurry, all of a sudden, and so me and a couple of other people I respect greatly are standing, and we immediately become subject to aggression and attempts to bully straight off the bat, and each time it fires off, which of course we're in sort of starting the campaigning period now, which means certain people are jumping onto Facebook and just shooting their mouths off very loudly, and each time it comes up, it's a horrible feeling, and I think to myself, why am I doing this? And then as I think that to myself, I check in with what's going on for me. I'm pretty aware of, let's put it another way, I'm aware of what's going on for me emotionally, but what I've learned over my lifetime that my emotional response is a very good barometer or gauge of important things for me. So instead of kind of running a mile and throwing the towel and saying, I can't be done with this, have your nasty local politics and keep it, I'm not bothered. Instead of doing that, I'm sort of feeling what's coming up, and of course the thing that's just immediately obvious is what I'm feeling is what I felt when I first went to the meetings and encountered the way it's done here, and I'm absolutely certain it's what a a large number of good people who kind of would like to get involved in local politics feel as soon as they try to, or even as soon as they think about getting involved in it. So it's a very informative feeling. So rather than, I guess what I'm saying it for is rather than kind of push it down and sort of, you know, get angry or I'm not going to bother with this, it's stupid people, you know, rather than shout it down, that feeling, I'm quite used to letting it kind of wash over me, go past me, and then I can see what it's telling me. And you know, actually when I come out the other side of it, although the attacks are depressing actually in their rabidness, when they wash over you, when they wash over me, I can see from the other side how triggered people must be, and you know what must have been at stake, that let's put it this way, me and a couple of other people have messed up something that people had some, let's say, some attachment to making happen in the village. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of strong feeling there. So it's what's going on in the background of Real Lift Guitars doing guitar setup. Oops. And so in between doing these things, or during the daytime, I've been delivering some election campaign A4s, you know, saying who we are and what we stand for and things like that. And over the weekend coming, I've got to do some out and about foot slogging and campaigning, knocking on doors, and one of the things we've decided is just simply not to engage in the provocations to slanging matches on Facebook, because it's all too easy, you know. And even if you're calm and collected, which I'm pretty good at being, you know, there's still an unhealthy temptation to, you know, to pursue. You get tied up in being right, even if you do it in a polite way and stuff. And it's not for me. I don't think it's a productive. It's not productive energy. So we've kind of decided we're not doing that. We'll just speak to people, and if anyone has a question on the doorstep, we'll talk to people there. Rightio. Okay, so I'm going to go off and do this off camera, but as you can tell, I'm chuffed. So I'll be sanding this out with all these different papers. I will be also then switching over finally to a set of micro mesh papers. And as I do it, I'll be using these papers to continue to soften off the edge of the frets so that they're as nice and soft as possible. Now for this bass, I have somewhere, I think I have a block of tusk material. I think there's a couple of options. I've got a block of tusk material, but equally I've got some nice bone bass nuts as well. Bass nuts. So I'm going to see which. That's going to take me ages to make if I do it, and we'll just have to see which works best. But anyway, I think we'll probably end up doing the tusk thing. But right, so I'm going to go and do this sanding out. I'm going to probably find the charger for this, and yeah, obviously, as you can see, I've been in the sun on the hammock. It's my day shift while I'm getting ready to come up to the workshop, doing the election malarkeys. Right, here's the charger. Let's get that. Oh God. Yes, I need a couple of weeks where I just do tidying up. How long have I been saying that? Just as a quick thought as I plug this in, it's been a great week for customer feedback. Occasionally you need to blow your own trumpet once in a while. And yeah, I've had some, just some really great feedback. I'm very pleased. So I've got a bit of a glow of satisfaction thus far. And it's not always perfect. There are occasionally little niggles that we have to take care of and stuff, but the bulk of the time it's great. And this week has been particularly good. And I think all of my good work last week and week before has turned into repeat business or extra, further business this week. So that's a good way for it to be. Okay, we should be charging, or something. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, we are in, well, frets all polished out and all of that, cleaned, everything cleaned up. So we're in nut making. Here we go, making nuts in April. Nuts in April, nuts in April. So yeah, the nut making factory. So this is the original. It's quite a big nut. So it actually doesn't look bad, even though it's plastic. I think with a bass guitar, it's not quite as susceptible as you would have with a 6-string guitar to going out of tune, only because I think, well, I'm guessing that the strings won't be pulled as far through anything, or need to travel as much through the nut as a 6-string. Anyway, so what we've got here's me making a close copy in tusk. I've also got to thin it down now, so that means I've got to get out the sanding block. Could possibly use something mechanical like a Dremel, but it's kind of nice to find where I just put it. It's quite nice to try and get it down to size without using powered machineries. So we're looking to get down to 4.8 millimeters front to back. So just going to take it down here and then just double check. In fact, I'll get 4.8 on the clock. 4.35, 4.8 lock. There we go. So we're just going to get it down, close in on the size of the thing first, and then as we get there, we'll start trying to fit it physically, and then take it from there. And just lighten up the sandpaper as we get closer to the correct size, and just very finely get it down. And also watching now for it sort of going off. So we want it to be straight. So I'm a little bit, I need to pressure this one side more than the other now to just even it up a little bit. And again, that's the sort of thing that you learn to correct as you go along. Of course, you've got to make those, whatever corrections are necessary before you get down to the critical depth as you're about to approach. Because what you don't want to do is all this work and then find out you cut it too small, and then it will just wobble about inside the slot. Okay, so a bit more to come off this end here. So I'm just going to sort of lift this edge up, and then keep pressing down on that edge until we come back in to a flat-ish surface. Alright, a look and feel. Okay, we're right on the mark there. Now, I didn't really want to get to that point that quick, but hey, does that fit in there? Yeah, just about. So now I'm going to have to be very, 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 very extremely careful to get the rest of this now down to match this thin side. So I think I'm better switch to the finer paper, whatever happens. And my aim now is not to get cut down to the thin edge at all yet. So I'm just trying to bring this all back to a single thickness, and it won't be entirely straight, so we've got a little bit of a ledge on here, but my main aim will be to get it to fit in the slot, and then we'll try and bring it back to the right size. And now down another level of grittiness, and get it as flat as possible. And you can sort of, you can feel your way to it. Have a look at that. That is in the slot. Yep, possibly and that's a mile too high, as you can tell. I did draw around the original, but it's still too tall. But we can then take that down, and as long as we've got, you know, we've got the width right, which we're close to. It's a little bit over on one side, so we'll take a bit off either side. Again, not an easy way of doing it, just a fairly crude way of doing it. But we'll take a bit off either side, and we want to go down to the 43, but again we can just make a direct copy here, about 1 millimeter too long, so we'll take some off the other end as well. So this is all this custom nut making business is only ever sort of eyeballing it and working your way down to the right size piece. So we're almost there in terms of width. We're still a fraction too long. But again, I'm going to just take it down on the medium stuff. I have got a couple of bits here to try out, actually given to me by a very kind developer, which I haven't had the moment to sit down and play with, which should have been good for doing these edges. I wonder if I can. I don't think I can get it into operation just yet, because I haven't figured it out yet, which is a shame. But it's a nice little set of things. If I can but see. Let's have a look. Which bit would work with which bit? So we have got, okay, we've got a wall here, but we've got a radius that is a, what do we know that was? 7.25, wasn't it? And that's a 9.5, so that would be, it would be a bit off. So we can't really borrow that radius. Can we use that to do the square edge? Yeah, possibly. That's the concave bit, which is quite cool. We probably could. Let's have a little go, shall we? Should we do this just for fun? Let's try this out. 7.25. It's not the best match, but it's not the end of the world. Let's use 240. See what we can do while we're here. I've just done another coat of you know, spray. So we want a bit, so a straight edge first. Get a straight edge across here. Straight edge with a bit folded up, a bit left over. So let's take that down. I'm doing this by eye at the moment. I'm not measuring things precisely. So that should come to about there. Looks about right. And then we want about that plus a bit extra. That plus a bit extra. Put it on the edge of there. We can afford to have a bit more rather than a bit less. Put that in there, and then that goes to there. Right. Okay. Let's see what we can do. Now this is going to be a messy business, because it is already a messy business. Sorry. So let's put that on there like that. That's our first bit. Now let's cut an extra bit off here, go up the wall. Let's cut on there, like so. Come on, off there. Here we go. Let's go down onto the wall of this bit here, without it sticking straight away, which we don't want to have happen. Oh God, it's very hard to manipulate. So we could probably do with cutting that flush. So this is a great, well, hopefully this will be quite a fun thing. I don't mind putting a 725 radius on the nut, because I'm going to cut the slots into it anyway, so they won't, you know, the strings won't sit at 7.25. The 7.25 on this nut, because I've got this block here to do it on, is going to be nothing but a cosmetic 7.25, if you get what I mean. It won't have anything to do with the playing radius, which will be set with the, you know what I mean, set with the slots. Okay, now the question here is, can I bend this and fold it in, or should I make it 2 pieces? I think I should make it 2 pieces because I want them to slot into a 90°. So it's this and this, so I want the thinnest edge down here to be my vertical piece. For that, I'll put that in first. See what I'm getting up to. Possibly pull it tight, slot it in. Yeah, and I'm sorry about the camera, I haven't even looked at the picture. But I'm sort of getting myself a little, I can bring this back a little bit now. Get myself a little custom made nut sanding thing. The problem I've got now is I can't really get this very accurately into the corner. I can try. Indigo. Well, indigo. That's as good as I'm going to get it, with a bit left over. So you can see I've got 2 cutting surfaces, and now the fun. I can't find our nut again. No, that's a dummy thing. Where did our nut go? Here it is. Ooh. So we wanted square edges plus a shape on the top. Now I also have a little grisping thing. No, that's not the word. A grabbing thing that should. Oh, blimey! This is quite cool. Let's get my thingy here. Now this little device here should allow me. Sorry about this. You've got the worst picture, and I'm rushing ahead because I'm excited to get this done. So I can now here. I can't do the. This is a bit damn. I was hoping that I could. No, see, I can't do the. I can't do. If I can do that now, if I could turn back, if I could cut that one down, I could then have these sticking out the end, right? And I could put that on like that, probably, and a bit sticking it. Right, I'm going to do a bit of a savage thing. Look away, please. Ooh. 3D printed carnage, but it gives us something we can use. Now, I'm going to borrow the slide. I'm sorry, I've got to get this so you can see it better. Right, I'm going to borrow 2 of these little things. 1, 2. Now, what I'm going to hopefully end up with is a little gripificated thing. If I put these in here. Trouble, no, that's not a trouble, it's okay. So this should screw into there. That's the idea about this thread. Come on, you can do it. Oh Lord, it doesn't want to go. It wants to go in that one, but it's not so keen on that one. Flagration. Conflagration. So I'm sort of trying to get this to lock into there. Come on, I want to tighten up, please. Right, that will do. So the idea of this little screw in this one is to lock the nut in place. And once I've got it in place, I want the curve edged out and the ends showing. There we are. Look at that. Oh, Christ. Sorry. Now I can do this up. I've got no control over my limbs. I'm going to put this, tighten this up on the nut. Like I say, we'll end up with a 7.25 inch curve on the top. But hopefully that won't be. Oh God, I've just tightened that too much. What have I done? What have I done? No, it's okay. Right now. Oh, no, hang on, that's no good. How is that no good? No, it is good. Why is that no good? Why is it working that way but not the other way? Or is it working that way? Oh, okay, that's too close. That's going to touch the metal. So then I have to loosen these off. Now this is a slight problem because previously I had these, that was flush with the surface. Now, because I'm going to have to pull this out a bit further and hopefully kind of balance it where I need it, it's going to mean I'm going to have to put something in there to boost it. But now I don't have anything flat to go in there unless I can find a bit of leftover something from somewhere else to do the boostery bit. Hey, that's a bit of a pain. See, what I want to do is push this out further, but it doesn't. I need it out like that, but still gripped. That's the problem with this. Look, these are too close to the ground, and they are on both of them because they're gonna crash into the. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter if I sand them, does it? Let's let them get sanded, eh? And let's see what we can do. Okay, the nut is in place. Any movement? A little bit. We're grinding the bolts, but actually one could say, well, who cares? We kind of hope we're getting a 9.5 inch radius out of it. We'll check. Getting a bit of a square edge. We've got a bit of a shape here that I didn't intend to have. Let's get that thing, the guide, radius guide. Let's just see. What did we say? 7.25. Well, sort of yes, but there's still quite a bit of that. Probably needs a much heavier sandpaper to actually get there at any speed. If I just carry on sanding away from the edge and just use the shape of the deck to hopefully sand this a bit more, we theoretically should get down there somewhere. It's not quite right. Maybe it would take too long with this sort of setup, but it's good in principle. And I did quite like the edges bit. I think it'll take me too long to get the 7.25. It's not far off. It's just got a bit of an extra curve on the end, so I can live with that, you know. So this is going to give me a flat top, and it is rubbing on the nuts. Rubbing on the nuts. Putting on the Ritz. Okay, you know what? I rather like that. Bit of modification with the old bandsaw. So I take this off. Of course, the next thing I've got to do is let's get rid of some of these huge lumps of stuff in the way. We're still too tall, aren't we? But let's show you what we've got. I can't see what's going on. Oh yeah. So now we have, we're calling this the front. We now have this seated in pretty nicely, actually. I think we've got a little tiny bit more to do that straight. This is curved. Now, this is quite tricky to flatten this out to get this to work. Aiming to get this to fit nicely, snugly. That feels a bit of movement, but it's tall, that's why. So you won't have it that tall. See that? Okay, that's as much as I want to take off in that direction. Now we're too tall, but we're too tall firstly because we haven't put the slots in, the round slots. I haven't got the best tools for that, so we're going to be trying hard. So I guess what I'm going to do is we need to know which is the front. So I'm going to scribe onto here something that tells me which is the front. It's not really critical actually at the moment, doesn't matter so much. So this nut business always takes a lot of time. Okay, so well, what do we got? Okay, well, we've got writing on it at the moment which tells me that's the front. All right, so what we do need to do is we now need to put some more green tape on here. I don't think I am going to need that, so I better hold on to that. So put some green tape on here, stick it to there, try and trim it off. Now the reason I'm putting this tape on is it's going to serve as the means by which I can mark the slots onto here, and that's a critical part of this. Now what we've got to do is we've got to mark the center points of these slots, which is easier said than done, but you can get a sort of fairly good start point. Center point, center point, center point. And of course, if that's the front edge, then of course they're going to be thicker, and they're going to have they're going to have at least the string radius to work. And so we need, well, we don't have nut files specifically for that, but I will end up doing it with a needle file. But this is our start point. So what we can do is we can just hold these things up together again, and just double check them. They're pretty good, except one of them is a tiny fraction off, if anything. Now the problem with this is if we're going to get this on, we have to make a mark on here before this paper kind of falls off, and it's hard to handle. Right, let's just go back to here. Sorry about the image a minute, I'm just trying to get this marking bit done. Okay, I'm just going to accentuate this one. Right, so with that marked up, knowing that's my front, now what I really ought to do, just to be on the safe side, is to make myself an initial mark on there. And I'm going to do it with my trusty old, throw them on the floor, my trusty old V-notch file, but I'm going to go over to the vise and do it. So just stare at the thing for a minute. Front edge, backwards, okay. Just gently drop this into the vise, woodworking vise, I should say. Tighten up, put the paper back in. So this is really just to mark it on the surface of the nut right now. So number one, and the paper scrunches up straight away, so we've got to get it right from the first bite, or else we'll be going off in all directions. Okay, so there's my 4 notches. Now of course they're not equally spaced, technically speaking, because they are going to be there's going to be a wider hole at this end and that at the other end. Oh, I've just done that back to front, so that is the way it goes. Okay, so there's my marks. On my marks, get set, go. Let's just double check them against these. The problem with a nut, of course, is you can't put them face to face. You have to do them kind of end to end like this. Okay, that looks good for the middle points. Now, the only problem with that is now that's going to sit there, and we've got to eventually, I'm just going to help make the mark a bit stronger. We've eventually got to cut this deeper into this piece now without getting it wrong. And because it will cost us the entire block if we get this wrong. Oops. Let's get this one. Yeah, so that looks like a bigger spacing down here, but that is because the string is going to be much wider by the time we make the hole bigger. Okay, so there's my nut block and it fits in there. It's too tall by a fair bit. How much bit is it too tall? Well, let's line these up. See if we can line them up and see. It's about, I'd say it's about 1 millimetre. Let's just check something. 4.6. See, 4.7, 4.6. I think I've gone a tiny fraction too thin, but it might get bigger if it might just fatten out a bit if I take some of this down. I've got to take 1 millimetre off this, so let's just check the middle point. We are on high edge, front edge, we are on 7.5, so 6.5. So I'm going to, whoops, I'm endeavouring to take this down in as straight a line as possible down to 6.5, no less at all. And what I'm also hoping is as I get down to the 6.5, 7.3, as I get closer to it, I'm hoping that this will get thicker, a little thicker, so we just tighten up that loose bit, potential looseness. So it's very, very precise and difficult to get it spot on, and I'm also having to watch carefully for the straightness of the cut. I need a 90-degree thingy. So what are we down to now? Okay, we're nearly there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this round to the fine side. Look at this colour of that now, it's filthy. Turn this down to the fine side, and I'm going to now do my best to straighten this up to perpendicular, which is where we need it to be. So I'm sanding the long edge, or the tall edge at the moment, hopefully bringing it back to square, and then I'll hopefully will square it off completely now with the fine 240 grit stuff. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can. And what I want is on the front edge, I want 6.5, and I've got 6.63, which is not bad. Is it slightly thicker? Yeah, about the same actually. Damn. That's slightly annoying. I wonder, should I borrow, no, that's not a use of it. I could borrow an extra bit of this, and I might actually thicken this out and just sand it back down. Let me do that. This is sometimes what I do if I'm a point, it's a tiny amount off, but I don't want it that way, so I'm going to just boost this up with a piece of a bit of extra tusk material which I've got left over, the bit I cut off earlier, and I'm going to put this on the back edge, and very nice thick gooey glue. Stay there. And I'm going to put the back edge of this. Actually, you know what the truth is, the back edge isn't the flattest edge, but hey, let's line this up best I can. Perhaps I should have done it at the front edge. Damn, I only need about a fraction of a mil. Yeah. That's not going to work. I don't like that. Cut. So again, let's do it on the front edge, because the front edge is dead flat. So that makes sense. So first of all, let's get this down a bit. It's funny when I do this, because I'm basically cutting a shim. I'm going to make a shim that is approximately 0.1 of a millimetre thick by the time I've sanded it back. But that's fine, because it's just enough to seat this flat where I want it. Okay, there's my extra bit. Here's the clean flat surface. Clean flat surface. Yes, thank you. Here's the clean front surface. We want it to stick to, don't we? In fact, I could just do that a little bit more because it's not quite flat. Okay, I'm going to stick that to that and clamp it. Okay, so we're doing it on the front edge now, which is fine. No, we're not. This thing does not want to play ball, as you can tell. Hey, come on. Wow. Talk about putting up a fight. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to press this flat bit up against it. Aren't I? Okay. And then I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to press it down and make it stick. Even that's harder than it looks. Just chuck a little bit of this accelerator. I think it's pretty much all out. Yeah, I'm out. Get a bit in there. The last dregs of accelerant. Ooh. Okay, so I've got my combined thing on, and now I can very slowly take it down with back to front wise, and I'll end up with the tiniest, thinnest of shims, expanding the width of that just the tiniest bit so it goes in the slot a little bit better. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera for this bit, because kind of doing it on camera tends to lead me to make mistakes because I'm rushing it because you're watching. So see you in a minute, and we'll come back when this is done and shaped and fitted, but you see what I'm doing. Okay, sorry about the camera work today. I'm in a bit of a all over the place mode. So look, I've got the nut on in place. It's the right width now. Feels great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there because it's actually tightly fitted. It doesn't even need gluing. And I'm going to reassemble the neck, and we'll use the old strings as a way of, we'll use the old strings to gauge the depth required of the slots. That's a good question, actually. Do we want to do it this way? One thinks to himself, because we've got the scratch plate, the body. Maybe do you know what? I think we ought to do the electronics next tomorrow. Let's leave this here. Sorry, that was a waste of time. Let's hang this up. We'll leave the neck, and we'll do the nut close to the end. I think tomorrow we'll need to change the pots on here, which are kicking about over here somewhere. I had them. Oh, I've moved them somewhere. Right, here are the new pots. New jack socket. I bought quite decent quality long shaft ones to give us reach up here. Yeah, let's do this tomorrow. I'll put all these. Actually, what I'll do off camera, I will do some cleaning of these bits. But we'll do that tomorrow. Sorry, got it the wrong way around. But we'll take care of the electronics tomorrow. Reattach the neck and the pick guard, and then we'll do the nut as with the sacrificial strings, the old strings, just to get the nut right. Then we'll bin those and we'll set up with the new strings. Okay, so that's that for now. Thanks for watching.